Hello, everyone. I'm sorry that we've come in a bit late. Our speaker has been having a few technical problems with his computer and getting the sound and pictures up. So, London's waterways, then and now. Whenever I see Tim anywhere on the canal, he's usually got a camera around his neck. Tim is our North and East London branch chairman and also very much involved in leading London work. And you may have seen him in other presentations to that effect. But he has a large number of photos of his own and archive photos to show us this evening, so as we can see the differences on our London waterways over the years. So without further ado, I'll pass over to you, Tim, and look forward to your presentation.
Well, good evening. As Libby said, my name is Tim Lewis. I've been involved in London's waterways for the best part of 40 years now. So most of the pictures you'll see tonight are the ones I've taken either over the last, well, I'd say since about the early 1980s. The up-to-date ones, I'd like to think, are fairly recent. Many of them have been taken in the last year. I have actually found, I'm involved in the London Canal Museum, and I've actually found some quite interesting ones taken in the 1970s. So if I say this is from the 1970s, that means it's not one of my pictures, but the bulk of them are. First of all, I'd say explain exactly what I refer to as London waterways. This is a map here. We've got the Grand Union coming down on the left, and up the Paddington Arm, then the Regent's Canal, then the River Lee, and then there's the area around East London, around the East London rivers, Bowback rivers. Most of the pictures, all the pictures tonight are within the red dashes there. So from, I'll be showing the Paddington Arm, the Regent's Canal, the main line down to Brentford, and the parts of the River Lee. But the bulk of what I say, the bulk of the major regeneration in London is happened in the area in and around the Regent's Canal and the Lower River Lee. I thought I'd start around about Paddington in central London. So this is Paddington Basin. Paddington Basin has had a massive regeneration over the last, well, I'll say 40 years. The first big job was the St Mary's Hospital block. You can see there on the right. That was built there in the very early 1980s. But it's this is another picture showing towards the end of the basin. Then 30 odd years ago, the regeneration began in earnest. You can see here the canal's been drained so that all the walls can be rebuilt and inspected and rebuilt. Then we ended up with this. You can see the original bridge there. The large building in the middle is the Marks and Spencer's head office, and it's surrounded by flats and offices. And if we go down to the far end, we've got a mixture of residential and hotels, and a floating garden, which is a kind of one way of saying we're going to infill the canal and you can't go down there, but it's actually a quite pleasant little rest area. I mean, but even some of the regeneration has changed. When the first development was put in, this amazing corkscrew bridge, which was famous for never worked. But a few years ago, they discovered that they realised that the corkscrew bridge wasn't fancy enough, so they put in this fan bridge, which is a bridge with 5 leaves that they lift up one at a time. It's quite an amazing sight to see working. Only works once or so a day. We come out of Paddington Basin, going out towards the alongside Paddington Station, and the big development on the right is the Paddington Central development. This time the basin was pretty well unknown. You couldn't walk down the towpath here for many years. But this is looking back up the other way, and this is what it's like now. It's completely surrounded by development. and even a new tube station entrance, that's the Paddington Hammersmith City Line station entrance on the left there. I'll go back to here once, because even now we've not finished the redevelopment. The timber warehouse is on the left, the Travis Perkins builders merchants, and there's a 23-story building proposed to go in there. So that's one as our planning committee is keeping an eye on. There's a couple of buildings that have gone from the Paddington Basin arm. This is the old floating boater office, which was demolished when Bishopsbridge Road was rebuilt. It's quite interesting there. There was the stone on the bottom of the building there is actually a boundary stone between the Great Western Railway and the Grand Junction Canal Company. So I'm not quite sure where that stone ended up, but it was quite a mark. Another building that's gone is the office block that crossed over the canal, and that's now been replaced by a much more modern edifice. It doesn't cross the canal, but it's as we come out towards we've gone through Little Venice, but as being Little Venice there's not a lot happened there over the years. It's been a big conservation area. One thing that's changed a lot over the years is the amount of moorings on the canal. This is a screenshot from a 1950s film about the Regent's Canal. You can see not a boat in sight. You see it today, and these are all permanent moorings, well, not sure they're residential, but they're certainly permanent moorings looking up towards Maida Hill Tunnel. You can see that, yeah. And this is Maida Hill Tunnel itself back in the 1980s. You wouldn't have thought it's changed much, but you can see the beams across the entrance there, which basically stopped the canal, the walls from falling in. They were rebuilt, well, probably 30 years ago now. And and the cafe over the entrance is extended. It's quite a pleasant place to have your brunch there. So that's going through Maida Hill Tunnel. And we come through Regent's Park. Well, Regent's Park, there can't be much redevelopment there, but this is a picture of the Snowdon Aviary, which was a Snowdon Aviary, and it's listed, so you can't do an awful lot to it. But what's happening at the moment, it's being converted to a monkey house. So go there in a year or so's time, and you won't see the birds. You'll see lots of monkeys staring down at you. Getting down towards Cumberland Turn, where the old Cumberland Arm used to go straight off. Again, it's not an area for massive redevelopment alongside, but what has changed is the Chinese restaurant there, which is a bit fancier now. I don't think that's ever going to go anywhere. The low bridges around. Now we're heading down towards Camden. This is Camden Lock back in the mid 1980s. It was still a popular area then, but the amount of tourism there has gone up exponentially over the last few years. And if you see all the brick warehouses to the left, they've all gone now. And we've got well, it's mainly residential. You can see the old lockkeeper's cottage on the left with the castellated roof. This is a picture of Camden Market back in the 1970s. Well, probably wasn't much of a market in those days. Unfortunately, I've not got a modern picture of this, but you go there today and it's just stalls and stalls and thousands. Well, in normal times it'd be millions of tourists. This is a recent shot looking towards the Camden Market. This has taken, well, it's only taken a week or so actually, and the crowds are beginning to come back to London, but only a fraction what you'd normally see. Coming down through the 3 locks at Camden, this is the middle lock, and the big area, the area that's massively changed here. If you look on the look at the top middle of the photograph, we had a bit of a ramshackle market there. That is now completely changed, which I think some of the worst architecture on the side in London's waterways. This is the middle lock looking down towards the bottom lock at Camden. This is another 1980s development of the Sainsbury's yard. It's a bit of a Marmite bit of architecture. Some people love it, some people hate it. I've got to love it now because a friend of mine lives in one of them. But heading from Camden down towards King's Cross. This is a 1970s picture of a builder's merchants on the right-hand side, Lawford's. Merchants are gone, and we've now got the residential developments there. You'll notice in the last picture, you'll see the little blue cottages in the middle. They were retained, but not a lot else. Heading down towards St Pancras now. This building is still here, but even though it's only a 1980s block, it is all due for demolition and rebuilt as housing. There's a Royal Mail sorting office there at the moment, and a few other, there's some high-end fashioned warehouses. But again, all this is going to go in the near future. Now we're heading down towards St Pancras. This is quite interesting. Even the civil engineering has a bit of a false feel to it. This is an original. When they built the Channel Tunnel rail link into St Pancras, they built a new bridge, but kept the old beam on the outside, which has always been very good, except for last week when there was a stoppage when things started blowing off the bridge and they closed the canal for a day or so. This is looking at another 1970s shot, looking at St Pancras Cruising Club in one of the old coal basins. This is looking from the canal down towards the station. You see the slipway on the left. And this is what it looks like today. This is looking from the other direction. The slipway's gone, but there's a dry dock being built, and there's a few more narrowboats. The cruisers have now been replaced by narrowboats generally. Again, another 1980s shot looking across City, St Pancras Lock, down towards St Pancras. You see the tower of St Pancras Station in the background, and between there and the canal, there was a major gasworks. This scene has now changed. This is the same shot there today. The gasworks is gone. You can see the lock cottage is still there, and in place of the gasworks, we've got a major office development. You'll see there's a new bridge being built. We'll see a bit more of that later on. A new footbridge being built below the lock. And this is looking the other way. And just going to say, if you wonder what happened to the old gasometers, they were moved across the canal and rebuilt, and with flats inside them. Very expensive flats, I would add. I saw one advertised at £8.5 million recently, so it's quite a change from being in a gasworks. And so this is, but one of the gas holders is two of the gas holders were converted to flats, and the third one has become a public park. Again, this is the new footbridge below the lock, leading over from the north side into Camley Street Natural Park. Again, and this is another picture from the 1970s, looking back towards St Pancras lock. You can see the gasometers get there, and this is what it looks like today. And it's getting so popular they need to put more bridges in. So this is the third bridge. This bridge was put in last weekend. It's the third bridge that's been built over the canal in the last few years to connect the university site to the station. Sorry, let's wait for my computer to catch up. All right, on the north side of the canal, I don't know if any of you went clubbing in the 1990s or 1980s, the old Bagley's nightclub. This This area here was the old coal drops, where the coal was transferred from where coal came down by railway and transferred into. It was quite a dodgy area for a long time, but now this is the what they call the Coal Drop Shopping Centre. The Thomas Heatherwick designed roof there. A very expensive and very trendy shopping centre now. Again, still in St Pancras, so now we're looking away from St Pancras towards King's Cross and the old Goods Way moorings. And that's what we've got there today. We've got a brand new 3-storey pub on the left called the Lighterman. And the big glass building is the Guardian and Observer newspaper office, amongst other things. King's Cross is probably the one. King's Cross has changed unbelievably over the last few years. It was, when I started involved in the Canal Museum back in the 1990s, it was as a dodgy area as you'd ever want to go to. Now it is a major tourist and office and education destination. Even so, this is looking across the canal towards King's Cross Station. This is the new £800 million Google office being built. Now, we're in King's Cross now. This is Battlebridge Basin, which runs south from the Regent's Canal. This is taken in the very early 80s, when there was some very intrepid people set up moorings there. And that's what it looks a bit more like today. It's mainly surrounded by residential, but with some offices on the right-hand side. This is looking back up from the bottom of the basin towards the canal, the Regent's Canal, and this is the back end of the building we saw a minute ago, the Observer Guardian newspaper office. Unfortunately, we lost a pub, and gained some very trendy wine bars. This is the London Canal Museum, which is in Battlebridge Basin. Back in the early 1990s, but with the pressure on development, we've gained a few neighbours. Right, we've gone through King's Cross, we've gone through Islington Tunnel, and we're out on the east side of Islington Tunnel. Again, not an area you're going to see a lot of massive development, but physical development. But what we have seen here over the last couple of years is the establishment of what we call eco moorings. There were so many complaints from the residents about the amount of smoke coming off moored boats. So CRT have very expensively put electricity bollards down here to prevent to stop complaints from the neighbours. Across the canal from Knoll Road, it's the old Dyespeker Terrazzo works, and again now being converted to very trendy offices. Excuse me, my computer's just catching up with me. Right, this is just below City Road Lock. City Road Lock is on the right-hand side there. We're looking back towards Islington Tunnel. This is the again taken in the 1970s, just as the area started to be redeveloped. And that's the same shot seen today, with the housing on the left and offices in the distance. And this is something I found from a magazine. It's a 1950s shot of an IWA trip along the Regent's Canal, the City Road Basin. Again, City Road Basin in the background. I think the MCA would have a bit of a hissy fit. They saw that picture today. Again, this is looking down City Road Basin in the 1970s. Looking down to the newly, I think that's the NatWest Tower being built in the background. And this is what it looks like today. All the big city with two very large residential tower blocks being built at the bottom. But they have put a statue on the city road. Again, there's travelling east from City Road Basin, we come across Wenlock Basin, slightly smaller than City Road, but this shot taken in the 1970s shows it very derelict. It's become a bit more popular now. There's a number of moorings down there, and the whole area around there has been redeveloped for housing. Well, now we're travelling a bit further along the Regents. Again, this shot was only taken very recently, but this is again where I'm showing the pressure on canal side development in London. The whole of the canal along the left on the far side there is up for redevelopment. They're going to leave the chimney. You'll be glad to hear, but if the current proposals go through, all this on the left hand side will be like 7-storey buildings. Excuse me while the computer catches up. The development in the middle is called the old Eagle Road Studios. Sorry, this is a building. Some people might remember. This is the old Gainsborough Film Studios, and this is where Alfred Hitchcock learnt his trade, as the fame goes. But this is being completely developed, rebuilt as residential. There's a very scary 20-foot bust of Alfred Hitchcock behind this development. It's well worth seeking out. Carry on further along the Regent's Canal, we come to Kingsland Basin, which is a very early boating community put in by the Canals and Hackney user group. As you can see, the pressure on the development in Hackney has certainly brought this along. And one thing, the pressure of development in London has made the towpath very busy, very busy, especially in this last year of pandemic. Even to such an extent now, even the cyclists complaining they can't speed along it. A shark art development was put in last year, but unfortunately this one upset the council so much they made them take it away under planning laws. I think it's been reinstated in City Road Basin. Coming down towards Acton's Lock, you can see this is again taken back in the 1980s. Again, massive pressure on to build alongside the canal. In this case, just residential. Again, coming through Broadway Market, the old Bethnal Green Gasworks. Again, there is a proposal here to do something very similar to St Pancras and build housing inside the inside the old gasometers. I'll believe it when I see it. Again, coming down towards Victoria, coming down to Victoria Park. Again, not an area you'll get physical development, but it has got very popular with as moorings. So it's a again, and one thing we are losing as well, we've lost quite a few pubs alongside the canals in London. This is the old Cricketers Arms in Old by Old Ford Road. Again, redeveloped as housing. Heading down through the proper East End now through Mile End. This is Mile End Lock taken in the 1970s. Now completely surrounded by, well, certainly on the west side by Queen Mary University. The teaching blocks and the halls and student residences. Again, heading down through past Mile End Park here and the main line out of Liverpool Street. Same bridge, slightly more development. Again, we've lost all the industry through East London now. There's some of the old overhanging warehouses. Again, down towards Johnston's Lock on the Regents. Again, I can't. Again, we're heading down now towards Salmon Lane Lock, and this was a very dodgy area when I first moved to London. Again, very the old bridge has been rebuilt, and massive housing developments there. Heading down towards Limehouse. This is the last lock on the Regent's Canal before you reach Limehouse Basin, a commercial road lock. Looks a bit different now. The between the two pictures, the Docklands Light Railway was rebuilt over the old Blackwall Railway viaduct. And this is my boat in Limehouse Basin in 1986. And that's what it looks like today. Slightly more popular. Again, same with Lime, as well as the basin being redeveloped. Once the shipping went from the basin, the lock was far too big. This is one of the last trips through the old ship lock out of Limehouse Basin. And over the mid-80s, there was a new lock built inside the old lock. And that's what the lock looks like today, completely surrounded by housing. And back in the 1960s, before the Limehouse Cut was connected to Limehouse Basin, there was an old lock that went out onto. There was a lock that went out onto the Thames. This is the remains of it. And they just decided we'll keep the lock, but we'll keep the water, but we'll just reinstate it as a water feature. And while they were redeveloping Limehouse Basin, they decided to build a motorway underneath it. So rather than tunnel underneath it, they filled in the basin and built the road through it, then backfilled it, then put the water back in over the top. Now it's a very popular mooring. So we're heading into East London now. So we've got, I said that I'll try not to explain it too much, but we've basically what you've got here. You've got the tidal Bow Creek coming up from the River Thames. You've got the Limehouse Cut there. You've got the Hertford Union Cut here, and the River Lee, and a series of waterways called the Bow-Back Rivers. As part of the Olympic development, they decided to make the waters non-tidal and build a lock. And while they were dredging out for the lock, they found out some of the old remains of the Euston Arch that had been dumped in the River Lee when it was quite controversially demolished in the 1960s. And the new lock at 3 Mills was built. Probably the biggest white elephant ever built as part of the Olympics, but we've got it now. Again, this is Bow Locks, looking at from the River Lee down towards the tidal Bow Creek. And these would the problem here that the tide would come in every overtop the locks twice a day and fill up the River Lee with silt. So a few years ago, the locks were rebuilt with double gates and a wall alongside between the non-tidal and the tidal section. So this lower River Lee is no longer semi-tidal. This is the 3 Mill, the 2 Mills at 3 Mills. Back in the 80s, before the area became popular, and the building on the left is what they call the Tide Mill, and that's now a museum. And the building on the right is offices and film studios. But they were tidal. You can see where the tidal gate water wheels were underneath the building. As you say, there's two waterways connecting the regions to the River Lee. One of them is the Hertford Union Canal. Again, it was a fairly derelict area back in the 1980s, but again, anything in East London now is ripe for development. This is looking back towards the River Lee. Now, just as a matter of interest, this is taken a few weeks ago when they drained the Hertford Union for wall repairs. This is the Limehouse Cut, which connects Limehouse Basin to Bow Locks. Again, 40 years ago, you wouldn't have dreamt of living down here or mooring about down there, but it's on the River Lee now. We're heading up I've not got the before picture here, but this is Old Ford Lock on the River Lee. Again showing the development around Hackney Wick. And the building, obviously, the area to the right was the Olympic site, which involved, and as part of the development, there's quite a few new bridges put in. Going up the River Lee towards Hackney Marshes. This is the old Lesney Matchbox Cars factory. Well, the factory was here and went down for about another quarter of a mile. It was the largest car plant in the country, but only very small cars. This is the site now. This is looking back up towards that building we saw a minute ago. That small tower block has now been built as a tower block, and these houses here were the old Matchbox factory. Again, this is just some typical shots going up the lower River Lee. This is going up. It just shows the type of development that's gone on there. This is quite an interesting one. This is looking north from Tottenham Lock. British Waterways owned a small yard here with some very low-rise factories or warehouses, and that's what's there now. Anything up to 30 stories gone up the side, gone up there, and again a new bridge being built as well. But what we have gained a brewery. This is the Camden Town Brewery in Enfield Lock. Not Enfield Lock, Ponders End. Right, we're heading. It's a bit jumping around a bit now. We're going back down towards Bow Creek. I've not shown a lot of tidal work on this talk. That's another subject. But these two shots do show what's happening. Yeah, the massive developments in London. This is on Bow Creek on one of the Oxbow Lake bends. And the ship on the right there is delivering to the old pure margarine factory. There's a narrowboat going past it. You can see that's the factory. And that's what we've got there today. We don't want factories in London, we want high-rise housing. Again, we're carrying on now towards the Bowback Rivers. So I did have a map here somewhere, but it's disappeared. This is Carpenter's Road Lock. Carpenter's Road Lock was one that connected the River Lee to the tidal waterworks river. Two radial gates which were lifted up from these towers. They sat there for many years. I reckon there was only one boat ever used it. It's between about 1930 and 1909 up to 2000s. But when the Olympics happened, the lock was partly restored and some very fancy bridges built across the top of it. And once the Olympics was finished, the lock was fully restored. You can see one of the radial gates here. At the lower end of the Olympic Park was the second lock that connected the two sections of the Bowback Rivers. This is a City Mill Lock. Again, had double gates at the bottom so it could operate either side of the tide, either with the tide was above or below it. And this is a few years later, just after the Olympics. You think, okay, it's been developed, but no, we had to develop it even more. So, so this is looking back down towards the River Lee. The rear of it, which is the City Mill River, contains back in the when I came to London, it contained the City Mill Yacht Club. There's some very interesting boats down there, and that's what it looks like today. Looking from the other side. This is City Mill Lock here. The shot you saw earlier on was looking back towards us. But again, this is showing the development of the south end of the Olympic Park. The second waterway through the park was the Waterworks River, and this is it back in the 1980s when it really was I mean, the area of what the Olympic Park is now was an unbelievable area. It was like stepping back in time going in there for the dereliction, but go there today. That's the same view looking backwards. If you go a bit further up, we've got the sorry about this. This is looking across to the Olympic Park, what was the Olympic Stadium, now the West Ham football ground, and the ArcelorMittal orbit. But this is the Waterworks River, which was tidal, but when they built 3 Mills Dock, it became non-tidal. Again, this is looking back towards where we just seen the you've got what was the Olympic Aquatic Centre, and all the trip boats on the Waterworks River. This is part of the Olympic Park. There's still a massive amount of development going on in the, what was the Olympic Park. Again, this is what something a little disused waterway called the Pudding Mill River, which came off the course of the old River Lee. But they decided they wanted a stadium there instead. So the Pudding Mill River was completely wiped out, and the stadium built on top of it. Now, this is a very old picture of an RWA walking trip back in the 1980s to discover the Bobat rivers. Don't think any of us imagined what it would be like 30 years later. Again, we're on the City Mill River now, which is the waterway between the River Lee Navigation and the Waterworks River. Again, this is showing what the Olympic site was before the Olympic redevelopment. That's what it looks like today with the stadium in the background. That's basically Central London and East London dealt with. As I said, the bulk of the development is in the central and to east, but there still has been a fair bit of development in the West London. This is Ballsbridge Junction, the junction of the Paddington Arm and the Grand Union main line. It's the old British Waterways workshops. There was a dry dock here, but Tesco's took it over and made it into a what do you call it? An historical building, and you can't be used because they put a low bridge over the head of it, the bottom of it, so it can't be used as a dry dock anymore. Again, Paddington Arm. It's a very low-rise area, but there are hot spots of redevelopment. This is Alperton, the Grand Union Village. I think it's called. And this is a infrastructure development. This is the old aqueduct over the North Circular Road. Again, the North Circular Road needed redeveloping. I'm afraid I haven't got a recent shot, but this is the aqueduct. This is the new aqueduct being built to replace the old one. The new one was built alongside the old one, and over a couple of months, the old one was demolished and the new one slid into place. This is on the Paddington Arm heading towards Park Royal. On the right, on the left, you've got the what was the Heinz factory, the baked bean factory, and on the right, you had the Guinness factory. We used to call it Windy City for some reason. Again, this is what the Heinz factory looked like a few years later, and it's now complete, and that is now all industrial units or warehousing now. Heading down towards London, we got the old Taylor Woodrow offices, which actually spanned over the canal. Again, when Taylor Woodrow's moved out, they were demolished, and a big housing development and a new marina as well. So, heading down towards West London now. We're back up to Ballsbridge and heading down towards Brentford. This is well before my time. This is a picture of the old Brentford basin and the overhanging warehouses there. And that's what it looks like today. Same place. This block was built on where those warehouses were. But there's still a lot more as well, though. There's a couple of older overhanging warehouses left. Well, there would be if they had roofs. And the local IWA are very involved in campaigning to keep some of them as a memory of what the area used to look like. But it's under a massive pressure for housing to be built on this site. And that's the redevelopment of London covered. So you've seen Central London, East London, and a bit in West London. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you very much, Tim. Despite your challenges with the technology, you've given us a mass of things to look at, and there are a number of questions that have come up, some of which I have quietly answered as we've gone along. But I shall go to some of the ones that are remaining. Please put your questions into the Q&A section. Right, Robert has come up with height is a problem and spacing back from the canal of higher buildings. Could planning gain get more towpath width for pedestrian density?
I think the towpaths are generally fairly constrained by the existing infrastructure. So we are in places like Paddington Basin, where when I first came to London, you couldn't. There was no towpath around Paddington Basin at all. But now it is it's completely accessible. So it's certainly in places like Paddington, it's been improved. But along most of the canal, you're constrained by the existing walls. But we as a organisation, IWA monitor all the planning applications and make sure that there's no encroachment and hopefully improvement.
Right. Kathy asked, are there preservation orders on any of the older buildings that have survived modernisation?
I'm sure there are, but there's not too many historic buildings, I'd say, alongside the canal these days. But it's quite interesting. Actually, you saw the picture. Hopefully, you saw the picture of the Sainsbury's development in Camden. That has since been listed in its own right, and that was only built in the 1980s. But I'm trying to think of any listed buildings. I'm sure there are, but certainly around the King's Cross, some of the lock cottages and the buildings by the coal drops.
Derek may be able to help us here because he's our London Heritage officer.
Yeah.
If you want to chip in, Derek, please do.
Yeah, but I say most of the canal was warehousing. It wasn't particularly exciting. Most of them weren't very exciting buildings. I think the Gilbey's building in Camden, the big white building you saw by the lock, I think that's listed. As is the Snowdon Aviary in the zoo. Yeah.
There's a different Robert this time. Can you think of any development in London that you consider to be genuinely sympathetic to canal environment? To me, there often seems to be a clash between the old and the new. Do you agree?
I'm seriously trying to think. The work around at Granary Square at King's Cross is certainly very interesting. But again, I'll go back to what I said earlier on. You know, traditionally the canals weren't pretty places. They were lined by warehouses. There's a couple of the. If you go along Limehouse Cut, there's some of the old warehouses have been converted, but warehouse conversions and more commonly on the Thames rather than on the canals.
Yes, there's those warehouses in Paddington Basin, aren't there? That they've kept they had to keep the facade for them anyway.
Not in Paddington. Well, I'd say that the Travis Birkin ones are due for demolition. So it's there's a few cottages down by. Owned by St Mary's, but generally Paddington Basin's being blitzed.
Mike is asking, is the London Canal Museum listed?
No, it's not.
Right.
And to be honest, we don't. I'm a trustee of the Canal Museum. Having a building listed, it sounds good, but it starts to severely limit what you can do to it. So it's no, it's not listed, but we're not intending to do anything to it anyway. So it's going to.
Yes, supply of Roberts this evening. We've got a third Robert this time. This, I think, is answered really by come and listen to our next webinar on the 7th of June. It says, does it look as if CNRT will have to restrict or ration boats on the canal in central London?
Yeah.
I think probably.
Well, that's not really covered under this subject. That's as Libby said, that's a meeting in its own right.
Robert, Matthew Simmons from the Canal and River Trust is actually coming to do the next of our London region webinars on the 7th of June. And the subject that we had back in December last year was about managing the boats on London's busy waterways. And there has been an engagement period, and now there's a consultation document coming out. And so if you link into what we're doing on the 7th of June, you can hear what those proposals are. Yeah. Ian, when BW sold their premises at Tottenham Hale, did they not think about holding into the ground floor levels for the benefit of water transport? Or were they obsessed with short-term gains? Well,
you would have thought they would have, and I think as an organisation, IWA did suggest that at the time. But I don't know if anyone's been to Tottenham Hale recently, but the development there has been unbelievable. The amount of, it's not just the canal side; there's the whole Tottenham Hale area. There's just tens of thousands of flats being built there. It's the pressure is unbelievable. No, but I do agree. It was a very good wharf. That should have been kept.
Jennifer asked the question. In fact, I went back to her saying, will it be possible in future to tour the basins by boat? And I wasn't actually sure which basin she was talking about, so I asked her.
Yes, yes and no. You can certainly Paddington Basin, but City Road Basin is a private basin. You wouldn't get a boat down Wenlock Basin, and Kingsland Basin is private moorings. So the only ones you can really take them into are, well, I say, Brentford, Paddington, Battlebridge, and obviously Limehouse Basin. But a number of them are private.
Yes. Jennifer, if that doesn't answer your question, please put another one in.
Yeah.
I have actually answered what happened to the Pirates of Camden. I've said that they're still there.
Yeah.
And I have answered the fact that somebody would like to send this on to other members of their shareboat syndicate.
Yeah.
And wanted to know if the recording will be available. And just to confirm with everybody that yes, this is being recorded, and when it's available, you will all, those of you that have signed it, will get a link. I'm sort of waiting for other questions, for general questions. Somebody was asking about being able to take, yes, locally I've seen a barge hotel on the Grand Union. Are there any of these in London for those not brave enough to hire one?
No, I can't think of one.
There's no hotel boats, but as
I think there might be some Airbnbs.
Yes, and Giles has got back to you to say about hiring skippered narrowboat in central London. Try community boat, Angel Boat.
Yeah.
But I would also say try the Pirate Castle as well. The community boats do provide skippered boats.
Yeah, I see Mike and Fiona have asked a question about planning, again about planning, objection to planning. The IWA do have a very active, well, a number of committees in London looking at, well, hopefully looking at every development. So we have some gains, we win some, but we lose a lot. But we like to think that we, by constructive engagement, we can affect some of the developments.
Yeah. Tarpley was another of boats that someone's just reminded me to mention. So someone is asking, are you troubled much by green algae?
Not on central London. The River Lee suffers from it, and the Bobat River's used to, but generally central London is pretty. I mean, I wouldn't say it's perfect because it has a lot of movement, so probably not so. But the lower River Lee certainly used to a lot.
Right, I think we've actually covered all the questions that have come through. As time is marching on, I would suggest that that we stop at that point and thank you, Tim, very, very much for doing this evening's talk. I know you had challenges at the beginning getting in at all, and I must admit Derek and I were sitting there thinking, will we be able to let people in at past? Then you finally got in at past.
Yeah.
So that was good. So I appreciate very much, and I'm sure everybody does here, your efforts to share all your knowledge this evening and all your pictures, particularly with the stress of not having that technology working very well, but all's well that ends well, I think. And so thank you very much. And I'm sure I speak for everybody that was a lovely trip down memory lane for many of us. So thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, we're not having another webinar at the end of June. I thought that'd be slightly antisocial when we're supposed to be being let out finally at the end of June. I think people will be wanting to get out and about, but we are having one in June on the 7th, Monday the 7th, which did come out on my circulation to members. And if anybody wants any more information on that, please, you all have my email. And that is an update from Matthew Simmons from the CNRT about the managing boats and their proposals for how to best manage the issue of the increased number of boats in London in terms of facilities, safety, and everything else like that, and moorings and what have you. So please join us on that occasion on Monday, June the 7th. And you can also get the details from the website. So thank you very much for coming, and hopefully see you next time.